My name is Daniel Rowe of TradeThePlan.com. In this video, I want to showcase our volume profile and VWAP tools and go into a little bit of the details of what makes our volume profile and automation system so unique. So let's just make this a little bit larger so you can see the graphics of the buttons. Okay, what we have here is a daily chart of the ES, the S&P 500. Here I have my two volume profile buttons that have different settings, and we could add as many of these as we want. But let me start with the VWAP settings, and I'm going to draw this on a daily chart without having a profile indicator added to this chart. And you can see it's actually downloading the data right now, and now it's building the profile. To be able to create these volume profiles on a daily chart as quickly as we're able to do, we had to create a pretty elaborate system. And through the use of this system, we're able to draw volume profiles on any chart from a single instance of the toolbar, controlling every single chart and workspace in the entire NinjaTrader environment, and then also be able to apply alerts to any of these developing areas on any chart, and finally be able to access these areas from any chart using Bloodhound or Blackbird to create any set of rules that we could imagine for automating the entire trading process from entry through trade management, money management, and exiting, or simply semi-automate any one of those different aspects of the execution of your trading system and strategy. To be able to do all of this is really a pretty exceptional accomplishment here. And to then be able to draw as many as we want on any chart, on any workspace, well, I think you'll see as we go through this demonstration here. Before we jump right in, let me describe to you a little bit about what you are seeing here. So the controls of each profile that you create, that you draw, will display up here above the profile. Well, it'll actually display at the top of the chart. So if the profile is off screen, it will stay at the top of the chart, as you can see. Obviously, each one of these buttons has a different function. I'll just briefly go through them. This changes the display, whether you want to show the profile only, which is the total volume traded at each price, profile with the VWAP and the bands, or only the VWAP with the bands. And of course, you can make this look however you want. You can lower the opacity setting here if you want to just barely make it visible, or full color. And for the profiles, you can make those larger or smaller just by simply holding the mouse down and dragging left or right from this box here, from this button. Okay, so you have full control over the display, the colors, and the developing areas. So for instance, if I want to show the developing volume point of control, which is the price with the highest amount of volume traded within this swing here, within this range, I can just click this button here, display it or not display it. This is the developing value area of this range, and this is the volume cluster. So if the value area is the top 70% of the volume traded within this range, that falls within the tightest consecutive number of ticks within that range, then the volume cluster is the top 30% of all the volume traded within this range that lies within the tightest number of consecutive ticks. And you can see the volume cluster shifted up here at the end of this retracement, which this retracement pulled back into, also pulling back into the VWAP, the volume weighted average price, which is the cumulative average of all of the contracts traded at every price, starting from this bar, the start bar. And then this last correction, what I think is a correction anyway, you can see the end of that swing was here at the volume weighted average price as well. So a lot of traders use profiles, especially the VWAP, of these individual swings. And with this tool, it's just so much easier to apply and set alerts. For instance, I can just click on the alert button, highlight the profile, then click on the VWAP, and now I have an active alert there, which I can set to fire at any number of tick distance or threshold. I can make it recur multiple times. I can control the direction of that alert, whether it comes down to it or up to it. I can send emails via our server, not NinjaTrader's server. So all you have to do is apply your email. We get the NinjaTrader alert in the alerts window. We get a pop-up which can act as an alarm if you want it to wake you up in the middle of the night. And you can set that to go off for any number of seconds. We can make the charts come into focus if they're minimized or hidden behind other windows, and we can make those charts flash. And we can also take screenshots and then email the screenshot to your email, and even auto-create and sort folders based on the name of the chart and workspace and bar type that the alert is fired on. So this is by far the most elaborate alert system ever devised for NinjaTrader, probably for any trading platform. Okay, I'll go through these other controls as we get into a couple of other examples here. So if this was the end of the first major correction after the start of 2017, which gave us the VWAP, which acted as support for these lows and this final low here, let's now look at the end of this correction near the end of 2017 on the hourly chart, so you can get a better idea of how these VWAP levels work so well. So I'm starting here, which is the end of that major correction, and I'll build the profile to the highest point. So we'll look at the profile of this entire swing, and these are the major levels. So this is the VWAP of that swing, which you can see acted as support here at this big sell-off. So if this were in real time and we moved to new highs out of this low and then began pulling back, I would drag this to the next higher low and anticipate support somewhere around the vicinity of this VWAP if we were to make it down that low. And of course we did. We made it to new highs, so now I'll update to the next major low. And there we have support near the VWAP as well. Here, make it to the upper bands, reject back down to the VWAP, make it up into the upper bands, drag it to this low. Here we actually made it to the second standard deviation band, so if I were to draw both of these, I would have a confluence of areas there. The second standard deviation band and the mid band, the actual volume weighted average price. So then I update to that low. And you can see in this final leg up, we didn't actually make it back to the VWAP, but we did make it back into the first standard deviation area, which some people refer to this as sort of the value area of the VWAP. One standard deviation above, one standard deviation below. And also to the point of control. The point of control actually shifted up here once the market turned up out of that low, making it back above that second standard deviation there. And now you'll notice that the VWAP projected forward from this last swing up sort of aligns with that major retracement swing high here, or potentially the first leg back up. Second standard deviation here. And if I draw these other profiles again, or VWAP profiles, you'll see that we'll have some other areas line up here. So we have the second standard deviation here, perfectly on these lows. The point of control of this last really huge leg up lining up with that second standard deviation here, and the first standard deviation lining up with that VWAP here near this high. Using these projected levels from previous swings is a little bit more nuanced method. What I want to do now is go into an example in Market Replay where I'll show you how I've created some automated entries around the profiles and then some specific trade management rule sets to automate the entire trade from entry to exit. And we'll do that on a 5-minute chart of the S&P 500 futures using the most recent examples so that you know I'm not cherry picking examples here. Today is March 1st and this is live incoming data right now. So this is the high of that big wave up, the end of which is right here on the hourly chart. So that high is this high. And what I'm going to do is run some real-time profiles all the way to the right past the current bar so that you can see what it would have looked like in real time back here. So as it was coming up, we broke above the point of control here after rejecting up out of the second standard deviation band, and then we found resistance right around that VWAP, turned down near the second standard deviation band and pulled right back into the VWAP again, and then the big sell-off yesterday. Right, so I have developed a system to be able to read these profiles from any chart, what we're calling, for lack of a better word, a reader system, so that we can automate, at least semi-automate, some of the different components of our trading and work to eliminate a few of the different issues that arise from trader psychology, not executing your plan properly, adding to losing positions, moving stops, things that we sometimes do to damage our trading account. So that reader system works inside of Bloodhound, and you see this recalculate button here? Recalculate allows us to get the historical values updated properly into Bloodhound and Blackbird so that we can do some backtesting. So when I click on this recalculate button, you now see the signals that I have built out here inside of Bloodhound. And Bloodhound allows us to create signals when certain rules have come together that you want to accentuate. You want to identify the bars on which those rules have come together. This tool allows us to build all of those different rules out with these drag and drop solvers so that anyone that doesn't necessarily know how to program can create rather advanced rule sets for entries and exits, and even trade management now with Blackbird, which I'll show you in Market Replay here in a moment. So for you to be able to use this, you won't have to know all of the ins and outs of Bloodhound. We teach you how to combine these into whatever rule sets you want, or you can use the ones that I've provided. So just from the past couple of days, you see a short signal here, here, and here. Okay, so now that we've used this VWAP as resistance, I'll delete that one and then draw from this retracement high for the current day. And look at that. We've pulled right back to here, to the VWAP. Interesting. And this has just recently happened in the past, what, hour and a half? Hour? So I missed a pretty easy trade there. But yeah, look at that. Upper median line and morning line of the channel all intersecting that VWAP there. Wow, that was an easy one. Okay, well, let's go into Market Replay now and run through a couple of these trades here. Okay, finally here I have Market Replay on, set to Wednesday, February 28th, 8:47 in the morning, 17 minutes after the open yesterday. Chart on the left is a 5-minute chart of the S&P 500 futures, E-mini. Chart on the right is a hybrid bar type that I've developed, which uses a minimum and a maximum setting for range, ticks, and seconds. Essentially in the overnight, it resembles a tick chart more, and then when volatility picks up together with volume, it will look and act more like a time-based chart. So I have Blackbird here on this chart on the right. It's set to a minimum of 60 seconds. So for the most part, it will resemble about a 1-minute chart. I'm going to go ahead and turn Blackbird on. And now we can go over the rules for this automated entry that you'll see Blackbird take here. So let me pause Market Replay, maximize the 5-minute. These are the rules right here. So you see I have a little text button, which we can put any repeating text in there. You can have as many of these buttons as you want. You can have as many of all of these buttons as you want. And they also have their own unique hotkey system. So I actually use the hotkeys to pretty much do everything. So let's go over these very quickly. For the short entry that you'll see Blackbird take here, I need 2 areas in the volume profile. I need a larger downsloping VWAP and a smaller upsloping against the trade upper second standard deviation. So I want 1 bar touching this VWAP, while at the same time also touching this upper second standard deviation band. So let me clean up some of these levels that I don't need. There we go. I actually don't need the profile at all since we're only using the VWAP. I'll go ahead and turn the labels off. I'll leave that low volume node in and the point of control, but disable the developing area, and then sort of minimize the actual profile a little bit, maybe dampen the color a little bit. Okay, so now this final rule on the 5-minute is either or, either A or B, A being A bar would have to be inside of this white rectangle that I draw. Yes, we can actually read rectangles and different colored rectangles at that. And also any line, basically any object this toolbar can produce, we can access via strategy. So yellow line, basically I could draw any area. Let's say I drew this area in the market geometry, and maybe there was one specific area that I wanted to highlight. I could set that to yellow, and now that line would be active. Or I could simply draw a yellow line. Now you could disable or enable any number of different rules. Everyone that owns the toolbar will have access to all of these templates, and we'll have several training sessions where I show you how to combine different rules. So now that we have that laid out on the 5-minute chart, I can finally cover the last confirmation rule for the price action, and that would be on this chart that we have Blackbird on. I'm simply requiring a large enough down bar that closes below the low of the previous bar. So once we hit the areas here on the 5-minute chart, and then we get the confirmation with a little bit of a move back to the downside, you'll see Blackbird enter the trade, and then we'll cover these other trade management rules here. Okay, it's hit all the areas now. We just need a reversal bar that's large enough, and that closes below the previous low, which should be this bar. Yeah. Okay, let me pause it for just a minute to explain these other rules here. So there are two order sets, order set A and order set B. Both of the stops go in at an offset from the entry price of 3 times the average range. The average range setting is shown here. So the average size of these bars is about 9 ticks. So both order set A and B for the stop loss goes in at 3 times the average range, but order set A will begin to trail behind the swing highs after it's moved in favor of the trade by 3 times the average range. And then likewise, order set B will trail behind the VWAP that I draw on this chart. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that one now. And you'll see that after 40 bars, if the price is below the VWAP, that order set B, the stop, will trail behind the VWAP. So let me disable the areas that we don't need and minimize the profile a little bit. So now for the targets. Profit target A goes in initially at 6 times the average range, 2 to 1, reward to risk. Profit target B will go in at 9 times the average range, so 3 to 1, reward to risk. Target B will not trail at all, but target A will attach to this second standard deviation of the VWAP on the 5-minute chart. Okay, but only after, again, it moves in favor of the trade by more than 3 times the average range, which is about 27 ticks. So once we hit about 27 ticks of profit, you'll see the stops start to trail, one behind the swing high, one behind this VWAP, and then the target for order set A will attach to this line on the 5-minute chart. So I waited a total of 40 bars before it would start to trail behind this VWAP to give this profile enough time to create an area that's actually usable. You don't want to try to trail the VWAP too soon and then get stopped out. There we go. Okay. I'm sure you heard the sound of coins dropping, which is pretty neat. Blackbird does that when you lock in profit, and you can disable that or use different sounds. So here we go. Order set B is trailing this VWAP. Order set A is trailing offset behind the most recent swing high. And you can see order set A profit target is offset slightly above this second standard deviation line. So it's still trailing the VWAP. We haven't put in a swing high, another swing high yet though.
Order filled.
And there, order set A was filled, the target. With every new bar, it's trailing behind that VWAP. And you could tighten it up if you wanted. I've kept it a little bit wide. Sometimes you do pull back to the VWAP and go through it a little bit and then continue. It's pretty amazing, right? We can create all sorts of different rules for the targets, for the stops. Over the next couple of months, I'll be developing out a lot of different rule sets and templates, which we'll be going over in the training sessions. So this stuff really is just getting better and better. And now that everything's working so well in Blackbird and Bloodhound, I'm able to focus all of my time on creating content and
order filled,
building out more and more advanced systems. So there it is. This really is something else. It still amazes me that we can even do these things. It's taken such a long time to get to this point, but this really is the leading edge of trading technology. So I'll stop here. There's obviously a lot more that I could show you, but I'll go into those details in another video.